have to become a cyborg to stay safe when it comes to manual lifting.
The venom from an Australian funnel web spider can kill a person in about 15 minutes.
As for spiders, they eat 400 to 800 million tons of flesh every single year. These terrifying results come from a compilation of 65 studies.
A large-scale area of acidified water has been found on the open sea.
A child is poisoned by opioids every 45 minutes. According to a new study published in Pediatrics Journal, poison control centers got more than 190,000 calls for children exposed to opioids from 2000 to 2015.
Ibuprofen was associated with a 31% increased risk of cardiac arrest.
At a first glance, it may look like a device to turn a man into a superhero. But RoboMate is a tool designed for industrial workers to help them in complex and tiring situations. It's able to reduce the effort needed to lift a load and protects the spine from heavy lifting and sudden movements. You don't have to become a cyborg to stay safe when it comes to manual lifting, but over 25% of Europeans experience back injuries at work. This has been the inspiration for the RoboMate project to give workers a tool to decrease physical stress and risks.
This technology helps us to prevent back injuries. It allows us to move in different directions all day long. And in the end, it gives the men and women opportunity to work in the difficult tasks equally.
12 partners from 7 European countries have joined this EU-funded project geared mainly towards industrial applications. Here in Germany, the technical teams are at the final stages in the development of this technology.
RoboMate was developed to help industrial workers carry heavy loads, for example this heavy box. With RoboMate it isn't a problem. Do you want to try?
It's not just industrial workers who need help with heavy lifting. New developments will focus on expanding the range of end users.
For example, in the logistics sector at airports, baggage handling, there is a great need. Or in the medical sector, taking care of elderly people, nurses who have to lift heavy patients would be happy with a RoboMate system.
The Italian Institute of Technology has been involved in the final RoboMate trunk prototypes in the areas of comfort, weight and motion control. Having stronger arms is not much use if the worker struggles to handle the load. The device needs to feel comfortable after hours at work.
One of the most complicated areas of the system is to make it easy and comfortable to wear. Not too heavy. In this way the user will be satisfied and he will feel that it's helpful.
To get a lighter exoskeleton, developers have worked to find solutions for every component. In the end, they found inspiration from the traditional backpack.
Within the project, I think that the most challenging aspect has been making the system as light as possible. Usually we use standard components like backpacks used by Sherpas, for instance, which are designed to carry heavy loads. But at the same time, they are comfortable.
A solution to have reliable control comes from medicine. It's a procedure largely used in biomechanics based on evaluating the electrical activity produced by skeletal muscles.
The technique we use is surface electromyography. We put one electrode on the skin which reads the activity of underlying muscles. These signals are processed and then we get the necessary information. The intensity of the force needed by the user at a specific moment will be provided by the RoboMate.
There are more improvements to come before the RoboMate becomes an everyday presence in European factories. The next step is to have workers accept it as a common tool of the trade rather than a kind of superhero accessory.
The venom from an Australian funnel web spider can kill a person in about 15 minutes. It might also prevent brain damage after a stroke. Scientists noticed a molecule in the spider's venom looks a lot like another chemical known to protect brain cells. So they did what scientists do. They tested the molecule on rats. The results were pretty impressive. The scientists found the chemical could help prevent some brain damage if administered as many as 8 hours after a stroke. Most strokes occur from a blockage or narrowing of arteries in the brain, and that's the kind scientists looked at in this study. They still need to test the chemical's effectiveness at treating strokes that result from ruptured blood vessels, and human trials probably won't start for another 2 years.
Your childhood nightmares of spiders crawling into your bed and eating your leg off one microscopic chomp at a time are somewhat validated. A new study published in the Science of Nature has revealed that arachnoids consume more tons of flesh annually than humans. Humans consume roughly 400 million tons of flesh every year. That includes meat, fish, and seafood. As for spiders, they eat 400 to 800 million tons of flesh every single year. These terrifying results come from a compilation of 65 studies combined with the efforts of researchers that looked into a variety of factors that ended producing staggering numbers. The flesh spiders eat is almost entirely insects, and that the majority of spiders live in jungles and forests, not in your apartment. The fact remains that spiders love flesh. We happen to have a lot of flesh, and there are 25 million tons of spiders that we have to spend every single moment of existence with.
For the first time ever, a large-scale area of acidified water has been found on the open sea. An international research team made up of scientists from the U.S. and China made the discovery in the waters of the Western Arctic Ocean near Alaska. RT's Alex Mihailovich is in Toronto with the story. Hey there, Alex. So what have the scientists found that's alarming them so much?
Well, it is kind of alarming. What you're looking at is this spot of acidified water that's been just growing and growing for the past 20 years. So if we look at a map, it kind of gives you a good idea of what's happening. This is just north of Alaska itself. So we're looking at about 300 nautical miles of this just vast space of acidified water. 20 years ago, it was about 325 feet deep. Now we're looking at about 800 feet deep. So obviously, it's not only spreading wide, but it's spreading down deep into the water as well. A lot of people are blaming the disappearance of summer ice for this, because what happens is that CO2 with the ice is not absorbed in the water. The ice basically shields the water from CO2 in the atmosphere. So once you have increased CO2 in the atmosphere, it gets absorbed by water in hotter conditions, and that's exactly what's happening here. Also, there's the water coming in from the Pacific Ocean because of currents. It's pushing a lot of water from the Pacific into the less acidic Arctic Ocean. So two streams of the way that this is happening, but the spot itself is something that's unprecedented. There is acidified water in oceans, but nothing like this. I mean, this is a massive spot. This team is made up of both Chinese and U.S. researchers. The spot basically also goes into Canadian waters. So it is something to be concerned about for a number of reasons, especially when you see the heating of the atmosphere, when you put CO2s into question, and the fact that water absorbs these CO2s in this way and the pH balance changes.
Now, do me a favor, break this down for us non-science folks. What does high acidity mean for a body of water like the Arctic Ocean?
Well, from one non-science folk to another, I'll tell you. The high acidity, it basically, the main concern here is at the bottom of the food chain. So we're talking about mollusks, we're talking about shellfish, we're talking about the little fish that the big fish eat. So when something's at the bottom of the food chain and that's being affected, we're seeing slow growth rates in these type of animals. So right away, the concern is for bigger fish, and then we go all the way up to the food chain, of course, to human beings. So the fishing industry can be affected by something like this as well, and that is the main concern. There hasn't been too much research done into something like this, just because of the fact that nobody's ever seen anything at this large of a scale before in the past. So scientists are keeping their eyes on this, and they are concerned. They are concerned that something like this can change the whole ecosystem of the Arctic Ocean, which of course would not be a good thing, and especially if you think that this is not something that's necessarily only in the Arctic. This can happen in different places such as the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, as well as the Atlantic. But right now, they're keeping their eyes on things, and hopefully They'll figure out what exactly is going down here, and hopefully it won't be anything that is too traumatic to the Arctic Ocean itself.
For years, the focus of the opioid epidemic was treating adult addicts. But 22 News anchor Kate Walsh shows us how painkillers are impacting children.
A child is poisoned by opioids every 45 minutes. According to a new study published in Pediatrics Journal, poison control centers got more than 190,000 calls for children exposed to opioids from 2000 to 2015. Babies through 5-year-olds ingested the pills because they were left within reach. Most older children affected were accidentally prescribed too many painkillers. Pediatrician Dr. John O'Reilly told 22 News doctors now have to ask parents if there are opioids in their home.
We're really preventing that. The other thing that we're doing is sort of saying, let's try the alternatives. Let's do some Tylenol and Naproxen and different modalities to decrease the pain so we don't have to reach that level.
He said children prescribed opioids are at a greater risk of addiction.
Unlike babies and children, the study found teenagers were taking the opioids on purpose. While some were experimenting with the drugs, there was a 50% increase in the number of teenagers using opioids to attempt suicide.
Dr. O'Reilly said painkillers should be locked in a hard-to-reach cabinet. But one man told 22 News if patients received fewer pills, there wouldn't be any leftovers in the home.
You don't need a 30-day supply, you know. And the patient should be able to say, give me 1 or 2 days. I don't want 7 days. I don't want 10 days.
Researchers say as the opioid epidemic worsens, this data is proof it's having a trickle-down effect on younger generations.
Most of us don't think twice about popping an ibuprofen pill now and then. It's a common painkiller, and for many, it's an effective remedy for headaches or aching joints. But a team of Danish researchers found that ibuprofen was associated with a 31% increased risk of cardiac arrest. Another common NSAID, diclofenac, was associated with a 50% increased risk. The team studied the records of nearly 29,000 cardiac arrest patients. The findings were published in the March issue of European Heart Journal. Gunnar Gislason, a professor of cardiology at Copenhagen University Hospital Gentofte, cautions not to take more than 1,200 milligrams of ibuprofen per day. He contends that drugs shouldn't be sold over the counter without professional advice on how to use them. But the editor-in-chief of the American College of Cardiology Journal tells Time most cardiac arrest cases tracked in the Danish study involved elderly people with existing risk factors.
Hello and welcome to CeBIT here in Hanover, where 200,000 people and 3,000 companies have come together to celebrate all things digital, among them two world leaders, Shinzo Abe and Angela Merkel.
The German Chancellor was with the Japanese Prime Minister to foster ties between the two countries in high technology and innovation. For Shinzo Abe, this was a chance to promote his idea of Japan's Society 5.0.
Please talk to me again.
That concept from Tokyo involves taking advantage of the power of digitization to create smarter and more efficient ways of living and working, and to better face the challenges of an aging population.
Japan has been a manufacturing country. Manufacturing itself is very important. So connecting the real world of the manufacturing and the virtual world of the information technology, that's the key, we think.
With innovations in artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, drones and robotics on display here, that vision of a smarter world seems more credible as the rate of digitization accelerates.
We do see that innovation is no longer linear as it used to be in previous years. Now it's exponential development and technical developments converge together and develop a disruptive power in many sectors of the economy.
So there you have it. All aspects of the digital transformation are on display and under debate here at CeBIT. So stay with us all week on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes.
An expedition company plans to conduct a 3D scan of the Titanic shipwreck. OceanGate Expeditions announced plans for a manned survey expedition of the RMS Titanic scheduled for May 2018. The expedition team will use OceanGate's state-of-the-art submersible, the Cyclops 2. TechCrunch says the Cyclops 2 carries 5 people, including a pilot and other crew. OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush says the company hopes to document the decay of the ship and create high-definition 3D images of the shipwreck area. The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is expected to send down experts to help employ optical laser scanning, sonar, and photogrammetry techniques that will create images of the wreck in multiple formats. The expected price of a ticket on one of the voyages is expected to be over $105,000. GeekWire says the last individuals who visited the Titanic paid $59,000 per person in 2012.